Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you're all doing well. It is at last finally time for me to give my long delayed take on immigration. I have gone back and forth as to how I wanted to tackle this, and after way too many months of procrastination, I decided that this video was not actually going to address how I would fix America's current immigration system, but how I would structure one if I was building a country from scratch. I think it'll keep the video at a more reasonable length, and it'll also be a lot more fun for me. But before we begin, there is one quick thing I want to note, and it's while I know that these three groups are often conflated, I do want to make a distinction up front between immigrants, refugees, and asylum seekers. As far as I'm concerned, these are three different groups of people that require three different policies, and I only intend on discussing immigration here today. Refugee and asylum policy will probably get their own video sometime in the future. Now, with that note out of the way, let me describe to you what I would consider to be an ideal immigration system. The first step is establishing how I feel about the concept of immigration itself, and it is my formal position that immigration is a good, wonderful thing that should not only be encouraged, but is often necessary for the well-being of a country. With that being said, however, I am not for open borders, and pretty solidly so. I would need to hear some incredible arguments to get me to even consider changing my mind on such a thing. As such, I do believe that there should be a system for people seeking to immigrate into a country. But the notion of having an immigration system is a pretty average take that most people tend to agree on. The colorful debates come in when we talk about the specifics of what that system should look like. In my view, the first thing that needs to be established is who we are letting immigrate into the country in the first place. Some people have generous hearts and would want to let in absolutely everybody who wants to come. But in my view, this is extraordinarily naive and logistically impossible. Some people are goofy clowns and want to restrict immigration based on which skin colors or ethnicities least offend them. But that's super racist and evil, so we're not going to do that either. So, we can't let in everyone. My country would in fact be selective on who was allowed to immigrate. However, the country would not be too restrictive or restrictive for stupid reasons. The compromise that I have come to is brought to you by the letter S for skill set. We would be determining who's immigrating into the country based on their skill sets. Indeed, I would establish two lanes in my system, a priority and a regular. The priority lane should be for those who have skills that the country desperately needs. For example, America has a nursing shortage right now, and we should be trying to remedy that in part by immigrating nurses from the ends of the earth. I would basically do the same thing in my own hypothetical country. Whoever has the skill sets my nation needs most of the time will be able to enter that priority lane. To be clear though, the regular lane is not going to be a joke of a system, and the process itself will look exactly the same as priority. The only major difference is that things will move slower. There is one exception, and one caveat to all this, and one extra thing I want to mention. The exception relates to spouses, dependents, and parents of immigrants already in the country. I would institute a similar family policy to those that currently exist in the US, as I think they're fairly solid. The caveat is that there will be a yearly immigration cap. These limits have nothing to do with xenophobia and everything to do with logistics. Like I said earlier, it is not possible to let in absolutely everyone. As such, a reasonable cap has to be placed. What that cap would be would depend entirely on population, economic needs, living space, and the state of the country's natural resources. It can also change depending on temporary events, like pandemics or recessions. The extra thing I wanted to mention has to do with diversity lotteries. That being, I would be totally happy to have one in place. I would like my ideal country to be a melting pot, and a diversity lottery would be a great way to make sure people from countries with lower rates of immigration have a shot at coming in and participating in the nation state. And we can have two different ones for both the priority and the regular lane. Alright, so we have established how my country will be selecting immigrants to move in, but now we need to establish what that process itself is going to look like, from its first steps to the final process of naturalization. In my view, that system, while not necessarily easy, should be relatively straightforward and have the infrastructure in place to make sure people aren't lounging in the process for years and years. The first part of this application would look like a typical interview process, as if you were applying for a job. You'd fill out an application, or an employer or family member already in the country can fill one out for you, and you would have an interview. If your application is approved, you would get a nifty green card. This will be the legal documentation that proves you are a lawful resident while you complete the rest of the immigration process. The first part of this process will be to establish residency for 4 years. During this time, you would not only establish a life and start working, but you would also be partaking in a process I would like to call logistical assimilation. This would involve learning the predominant language, understanding our currency and banking systems, learning our driving laws, and preparing for a civics exam similar to what the US currently has. I want to be clear, though, that this is the only kind of assimilation that would be required. Immigrants in my land would not only be free, but encouraged to continue partaking in their customs and traditions and to share that with their neighbors. Remember, I want a melting pot, and the melting pot is boring if it's all full of peas. As such, as long as they are not infringing on the rights of anyone else, they can do whatever they want. And that transitions nicely into the other requirement, that being to be an upstanding citizen. That's a pretentious way of saying, please don't commit any crimes. You'll have nothing to worry about if you get a few speeding tickets or anything minor like that. But if you start breaking into people's homes and robbing them, or if you murder anybody, you are going to be banished, and you're never going to be allowed to partake in the immigration process ever again. And that'll only happen after you get out of prison. But here's the thing. I expect that 99.9% of those who immigrate will never have to worry about that. And once they have established their 4-year residency and completed all of their logistical stuff, they will be ready to become citizens. It will be a cute little ceremony with an oath and a cake and little flags, and it'll be a time of joyous celebration, like pony rides outside maybe. After the event, they'll get all their official documents that indicate their newfound citizenship and all the rights and privileges that come with it, as well as the joys of regular income tax, which they will be exempt from during their establishment of residency, although they would still be paying sales and Medicare taxes. And yeah, that's about it. That's my ideal immigration system. I think it's both welcoming and inclusive while being pragmatic and logistically sound, which is the balance I was trying to strike. If you have any notes or anything you want to add or criticize or suggestions you'd like to make, please leave them in the comments, or you can message me directly. I'll be honest, I'm not super ideological on immigration. This was just one of those issues that I'm not super passionate about, and as such, I'm very open to whatever any of you have to say. I'd love to hear your feedback. Maybe by this time next year, some of you will have talked to me and I'll have a completely different take. But for now, this is what I would want an immigration system to look like. Maybe one day I'll be able to start my own nation and try and implement this, but for now, I can only dream. Until then, like and subscribe, and if you do, I will give you automatic citizenship in my future country. I'm so sorry. Anyways, have a great rest of your day, everyone, and God bless.